I still remember the cold sting of the handcuffs more vividly than the smell of antiseptic that clung to the hospital halls I'd worked in for 10 straight years. One minute I was the guy everyone trusted, the one who stayed late, covered shifts, calmed frantic families, and the next, I was cornered in a break room, surrounded by officers accusing me of stealing opioids I'd never even touched. My coworkers wouldn't meet my eyes. My supervisor backed away from me like I was contagious. And when the security guard, the same man I once bought coffee for every morning, held up that found duffel bag of pills, my world collapsed in a single breath. No one believed me. Not my friends. Not my family. Not the court. 9 years of my life were handed away like they were nothing. But in that moment, as the verdict echoed, I made a quiet promise in my own chest: one day, I'd make the truth burn its way out. Before we continue the story, tell me in the comments which country you're watching from. I love seeing where my stories reach around the world. The morning started the way it always did: stale coffee, fluorescent lights humming above my head, and me running a double shift because no one else wanted to. I'd been the dependable one for years, the guy people trusted with their patients, their problems, their overtime. But that afternoon, when I was called into conference room B, something in my chest tightened. HR never came down to our floor unless someone was getting fired or someone had died. I just didn't know it was going to be both, my job and the life I knew. Mark Hensley, a hospital security guard I joked with every morning, sat with his arms folded like he was guarding a crime scene. Karen, my supervisor, kept smoothing the edges of a file that didn't need smoothing. No one made eye contact. "Please sit," Mark said, and there was this tone, almost rehearsed. The black duffel bag sat on the table like a bomb. When he unzipped it, the room went silent in a way that felt unnatural. Bottles clinked together: oxycodone, fentanyl, morphine. Enough to put me away for decades. "We found this in your locker." Something inside me cracked. My locker? Mark, that's not. Karen flinched like hearing my voice physically hurt her. The officers entered before I could finish, and the world blurred. Accusations. Cold hands grabbing my wrists. The hallway filling with whispers. Colleagues I'd known for years staring at me like I was a stranger, or worse. As they shoved me through the doors, someone muttered, "I always thought he was too calm." And that was it. 10 years of trust erased in seconds. I kept waiting for someone to say they didn't believe it, that there had to be a mistake. But no one did. Not then. Not for 9 long years. And as the squad car door slammed shut beside me, a quiet promise formed in the pit of my stomach. One day, I'm going to make the truth hurt every single one of them. They gave me one phone call. One. I dialed my sister first. She always picked up. Always. This time it rang until it didn't. Then voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. On the third try, she blocked my number. Just like that. No explanation. No what happened. No are you okay? Nothing. My parents weren't any better. My mother's voice shook when she answered, but not with concern, with fear. "They said you stole narcotics," she whispered, like the accusation itself was contagious. We can't be involved in this." Then the line went dead. She didn't even wait for my side. The next morning in the county jail, they brought me a stack of papers: suspension notice, termination letter, and a list of coworkers who expressed concerns about my behavior. People I'd helped move apartments, covered shifts for, cried with. All of them lining up to shove me under, just so they wouldn't sink with me. I don't know what hurt more, the betrayal, or how effortless it was for them. But in the middle of all that noise, something strange happened. A guard approached my cell around noon. Not Mark, a different one. A younger guy named Raphael. He slid a small envelope through the bars. "Came for you," he said. "Thought you might want to read it in private." Inside was a single sheet of paper. A stranger's handwriting. "I don't believe what they're saying about you. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here." No name. No return address. Just a quiet, steady voice on a page. I sat on that cot for a long time, staring at those words like they didn't make sense. Why would a stranger care when the people who knew me didn't? By the time they transferred me to the county courthouse, the hallways felt colder. Every familiar face avoided mine: nurses, residents, people I'd treated like family. They stepped aside like I was radioactive. And as the bailiff led me past them, chained and humiliated, I realized something that hollowed me out completely. It's frightening how fast people rewrite your story when it protects their own. The courtroom felt smaller than it looked on TV, tighter, airless, like the walls leaned in just to watch me fall apart. I sat at the defense table in a suit that didn't fit anymore, wrists shaking under the fabric, while the prosecutor painted me as some kind of mastermind addict who spent years stealing medication right under everyone's nose. Every lie was delivered with confidence. Every assumption spoken like fact. My public defender barely looked at me. He'd skimmed my case file that morning, shrugged, and whispered, "These charges don't go away. The jury's going to side with the hospital." Translation: prepare for the worst. Mark, the security guard who planted everything, took the stand with the same fake sincerity he used when he held doors open for nurses. He swore he noticed suspicious behavior. He swore he found the bag exactly where the defendant kept his belongings. He swore he wanted to believe the best about me, but the evidence didn't lie. I wanted to shout. I wanted to tear the words out of his mouth. Instead, I sat there while my entire life was rewritten by a man who knew damn well he had fabricated every piece of it. The jury didn't take long. They came back in less than 4 hours, barely enough time to eat lunch. Guilty on all counts. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just stared forward while the world behind me crumbled. My parents weren't there. My sister wasn't there. Not a single person from the hospital sat in the benches. But Mark stood in the back, arms crossed, jaw tight. Smug. Triumphant. The judge handed down the sentence like he was reading a grocery list. 9 years. Mandatory. No parole before 5. My legs gave out when they cuffed me, but I stayed upright because I refused to give in that satisfaction. As they dragged me toward the holding cells, the prosecutor said to my defender, just loud enough for me to hear, "Another drug thief off the streets. Good work." The cell door closed. The metallic clang echoed in my skull. 9 years. For something I didn't touch. Didn't take. Didn't even imagine doing. And in that suffocating silence, with every piece of my old life gone, I realized the justice system didn't make a mistake. It made a choice. And I made one too. If the truth ever found a way out, I was going to make sure it took someone down with it. Prison doesn't greet you, it sizes you up. The first thing I learned was that silence was safer than innocence. Innocence doesn't matter in there. Nobody cares why you came through the gates, only whether you can stand your ground long enough to walk back out. My first night, the noise never stopped, metal doors slamming, men shouting down corridors, someone sobbing into a pillow 2 cells over. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how a life could collapse so completely in a matter of weeks. The guards treated me like I'd been guilty since birth. The inmates didn't bother asking what I did, they just looked for weakness. I kept my head down. Ate fast. Slept light. The only softness in that place came in the form of a letter, slid under my cell door during evening rounds. Same handwriting as before. Same steady tone. I hope you're holding on. You're not alone, even if it feels like it. Still no name. Still no explanation. Just a stranger giving me the one thing no one else had offered, belief. I reread it so many times the paper softened at the creases. In a world where everything felt sharpened to cut me, that letter dulled the edge just enough to breathe. Weeks turned into months. Fights broke out in the yard, I stayed away. Contraband moved through the tears like a river, I kept clear. When you're innocent, the only strategy that makes sense is survival. Survive today so tomorrow has a chance to be different. One night, after lights out, my cellmate, an older guy named Briggs, said quietly, "You don't talk like a thief." "I'm not," I whispered. He didn't laugh. He didn't mock me. He just nodded, like he knew what it was to carry a truth no one believed. "Then learn something while you're in here. Something they can't take from you." It was the first piece of advice I'd gotten that didn't feel like a warning. A week later, I signed up for the workshop program, a place that smelled like sawdust, oil, and possibility. I didn't know it then, but that room would become the backbone of everything I was going to build. And everything I was going to destroy. The workshop was nothing more than a converted storage room, rusted tools, uneven floors, a single fan that rattled like it was dying. But the first time I picked up a chisel, something inside me settled. For the first time since the arrest, my hands weren't shaking. I started with basic woodworking. Simple cuts. Rough edges. Ugly joints. My instructor, a quiet man named Ellis who'd been teaching inmates for years, didn't waste words. He'd just point, grunt, and walk away. At first I thought he didn't care. Later I realized he was giving me space, something nobody else had done. Ellis watched me one afternoon as I tried to fix a warped table leg. The thing kept splintering, and I kept gripping it harder, like I could force it into obedience. Wood ain't your enemy, he said. It breaks when you rush. I don't know why that landed so hard. Maybe because everything in my life up to that point had been ripped away without warning. Maybe because, in that workshop, breaking something actually made sense. So I slowed down, paid attention, learned the grain, the resistance, the weight. Months passed. My projects improved. Ellis started letting me use the lathe and the planer, then the delicate tools reserved for precision work. I'd stay late whenever he allowed it, shaping scraps of wood into bowls, frames, boxes, anything that gave my hands a reason to move and my mind a place to rest. One day, he set a piece of walnut on my bench. Dark, heavy, beautiful. Make something, he said. I carved it into a jewelry box, smooth edges, clean lines. A lid that clicked shut with a soft sound that reminded me of the life I lost. It was the first thing I'd made that felt like it carried a part of me inside it. Ellis picked it up, studied it, then gave a small nod. You got a feel for this? That wasn't a compliment. It was permission to believe I might still have worth. The next time a letter came from the stranger. You're stronger than what they've done to you. Keep going. I set it beside the box and realized both were proof of the same thing. I was still here. Still building. Still moving toward a version of myself they couldn't crush. Long before I ever knew it, this craft, this skill born out of desperation, would become the blade I used to cut my way back into the world. And eventually, the weapon I'd used to take everything back from the man who stole 9 years of my life. They released me on a Wednesday morning, just after sunrise, as if slipping me back into the world quietly might make it easier. It didn't. The gate clanged open, and for a second I just stood there, holding a cardboard box with the last scraps of my old life, a pair of shoes, a worn-out jacket, and the letters from the stranger who kept me alive more than they'll ever know. Most guys walk out to cheering family or at least someone leaning on a car hood pretending to care. My side of the road was empty. Traffic moved past without even slowing down, like the world had agreed I wasn't worth noticing. I had no home to go back to. My apartment had been cleared out years ago. My job? Gone. My family? Silent. My bank account held $48, courtesy of the state, like an apology wrapped in an insult. I was about to start walking, anywhere, nowhere, when a silver sedan pulled up and parked a few yards away. The window rolled down slowly. Need a ride? A voice called. I froze. It was Raphael, the young guard who used to pass me those letters in jail before I was transferred to state prison. I stared at him like he wasn't real. You waited for me? I managed. He shrugged, hands gripping the wheel like he was nervous. 9 years is a long time to stand by someone. Figured you shouldn't take your first steps alone. I climbed in. The seat felt too soft after years of concrete and steel. He drove like he didn't want to scare me, checking the mirror, giving me quiet space. He told me he had a spare room. No charges. No conditions. Just a place to land. I finally asked. He kept his eyes on the road. Because I saw what they did to you. And because you deserved at least one person who didn't walk away. His words hit harder than the sentence ever did. At his apartment, I set my box down on the floor. The silence felt different here, not threatening, not cold. Just unfamiliar. Freedom didn't feel like freedom yet. It felt like stepping into a life that had been paused for too long, only to find everything moved on and without me. That night, I lay awake on a clean bed, staring at a ceiling that wasn't counting the hours of my sentence. I didn't know who I was supposed to be now. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to die the man they tried to turn me into. Tomorrow I would start again. And eventually, I would make the truth scream loud enough that no one could pretend they didn't hear it. Starting over at 39 felt like trying to learn how to breathe underwater. Everything was unfamiliar: grocery stores, buses, even the way people talked. The world had moved on, smoothed over the years I'd lost, and I had to pretend I wasn't drowning in the silence between conversations. Raphael left early for his shifts, but every morning he scribbled a note on the counter: "Coffee's ready. Do what you can today. Don't rush." He didn't hover. He didn't pity me. He just made room for me to exist again. I spent the first weeks taking odd jobs, unloading trucks, sweeping warehouses, anything that didn't require a background check that would shove a door in my face. Every rejection stung, but the workshop training stayed sharp in my mind. The feel of wood. The patience it demanded. The way creating something forced the chaos in my head to quiet down. One afternoon, while wandering through a local market, I stopped at a booth selling handmade furniture. The craftsmanship was sloppy, wobbly legs, uneven joints, and the owner was charging triple what the pieces were worth. Something inside me said, I can do better than this. Not out of arrogance, out of survival. That night, I told Raphael I wanted to try woodworking for real. He didn't blink. Then let's get you the tools. We bought used equipment from pawn shops and garage sales. Nothing matched, half of it needed repairs, but it was mine. I set up a small workspace in his garage, the same cheap concrete and sawdust smell from the prison workshop, but this time, it belonged to me. The first thing I made was a simple walnut cutting board. Clean edges. Perfect finish. When I posted it on a small online marketplace, it sold within an hour. The buyer messaged me, "Do you take custom orders?" I stared at the screen so long my eyes burned. Orders trickled in, then flowed. Word spread. People wanted quality, honesty, hands that cared about the work. I built tables, shelves, crib frames, keepsake boxes, each one a small rebellion against everything they'd taken from me. Money started coming in. Not a lot at first, but enough to breathe. Enough to feel like a person again. One evening, after shipping out a large commission, Raphael leaned against the doorway and said, "You're not just rebuilding. You're rising." I wiped sweat from my forehead. "Feels slow." "Good things grow slow," he said. "But they grow strong." He didn't know that every piece I crafted carried a thought carved deep inside it. Mark Hensley stole 9 years from me, but everything I'm building now will be the foundation of the man who destroys him. It happened on a night that should have meant nothing, a Thursday, quiet, ordinary. I was sanding down the edge of a maple desk when my phone buzzed with a message from an old coworker I hadn't heard from since before the trial. I almost ignored it. But something about the shaky typing caught my eye. "You need to see this. Check the link. Turn the volume up." My stomach tightened. I clicked. The video was grainy, posted by some local bar patron. A man slurring his words, waving a beer bottle, talking too loud over the music. It took me a few seconds to recognize him, heavier now, scruffier, but unmistakable. Mark Hensley. The man who'd planted the evidence. He was sitting with a group of people, bragging like he'd just pulled off a heist. Told him I found the bag in his locker, he laughed. "Easy. Whole damn hospital ate it up. They never checked the cameras from the week before, the ones I erased." The people around him laughed. I felt my jaw lock so tight it hurt. A woman asked him, "Why'd you do it? What did he ever do to you?" Mark leaned back, lifted his beer. He thought he was better than everyone. Always walking around like he was some saint. And I needed a promotion. Someone had to take the fall. The room spun around me. 9 years. 9 years stolen because he wanted a better title. Then came the part that changed everything, the part that cut through me like a blade. Funny thing is, no one ever questioned it. Shows you how easy people are to fool. The video ended there. My hands were shaking, but not from shock, from clarity. Raphael heard the sound from the garage doorway. "You okay?" I turned the phone toward him, watched his face tighten with the same cold anger rising in my chest. "This is it," he said quietly. "This is your crack in the wall." "No," I said. "This is the door." I watched the video again. And again. Every word. Every smirk. Every boast. Each one was oxygen to a fire I'd been smothering for nearly a decade. The system hadn't listened before. My family hadn't listened. The court hadn't listened. But now? Now I had his confession. Spoken. Recorded. Public. And for the first time since the prison gates closed behind me, I felt something I thought I'd buried. Hope. Sharp, dangerous hope. Because the truth hadn't just surfaced. It had handed me a weapon, and pointed me straight at the man who ruined my life. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the small kitchen table with my laptop open, replaying Mark's drunken confession until I could recite every word without hitting play. Rage wanted me to drive to his house and end it right there. But 9 years in a cage teaches you patience. Revenge without precision is just noise. I wanted devastation. Real, permanent devastation. By morning, I had a plan. First, I downloaded the video, every frame, every second, every slurred syllable. Then I traced the original uploader, messaged them, got their permission, and secured the raw file before anyone could delete it or patch over the sound. After that, I spent hours cross-referencing the details Mark bragged about, the missing security footage, the shift logs, The hospital's internal reports from the week everything went wrong. The more I dug, the clearer the pattern became: sloppy cover-ups, altered entries, time-stamps that didn't match. Evidence that should have cleared me simply never made it to my case file. By the afternoon, I had a full folder built, digital, physical, duplicated 3 times, backed up in places no one could touch. This wasn't just a crack in the wall anymore. It was a demolition charge. Raphael came home early, saw the stacks of documents spread across the table. "You're really doing this. Doing it the right way," I said. We walked into a law office the next morning, a civil rights attorney known for taking cases no one else would touch. I sat across from her, watching her face shift as she listened to the confession. She paused the video halfway through and leaned back, jaw set. "They gave you 9 years because of this?" she said softly. I nodded. "This is criminal," she muttered. "On multiple levels. For the first time in almost a decade, someone in authority wasn't looking at me like a suspect, they were looking at me like a case worth fighting for." She took everything: the video, the logs, the inconsistencies. "This isn't a review," she said. "This is an explosion waiting to happen. And we're going to light the fuse." Over the next weeks, she pulled the hospital apart piece by piece: old security staff, former supervisors, HR officials. Some denied everything. Others slipped. A few cracked wide open when the threat of charges got too close. And then came the biggest blow: confirmation that the surveillance system had indeed been tampered with. By Mark. On the exact days the pharmacy drugs went missing. The attorney looked at me across her desk. "We're filing. Wrongful conviction. Malicious prosecution. Evidence tampering. We're coming for all of them." I felt something tighten in my chest, not panic, not fear. Readiness. The truth wasn't just on my side now. It was loaded, aimed, and waiting for the trigger. And I was finally done being silent. The courthouse looked the same as the day they sentenced me: same pillars, same echoing hallways, same stale air that smelled like old paper and old lies. But this time I didn't walk in as a defendant. I walked in as the storm they never saw coming. News outlets lined the steps. Cameras pointed at me like weapons, but for once I wasn't the target, I was the story. My attorney stood beside me, calm, collected, ready to peel back 9 years of corruption in front of the world. Inside, the hearing room was packed. Hospital administrators. Former coworkers. And at the back, arms folded, jaw tight with that same pathetic arrogance: Mark Hensley. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Coward. The judge began, but it was my attorney who owned the room. She played the video first: the bar, the slurred bragging, the laugh that had haunted me through prison nights. The sound echoed across the chambers, each word landing like a hammer blow. When Mark said, "Someone had to take the fall," the whole room shifted. Gasps. Murmurs. Heads turning toward him like he was something crawling out from under a rock. He tried to stand. Tried to explain. But the judge's gavel slammed down. "Sit. You will speak when spoken to." Next came the evidence logs, the deleted camera files, the altered reports. Every lie he built came crashing down piece by piece, publicly, brutally, beautifully. When the judge finally turned to me, his voice softened. "Mr. Carter, the court recognizes that you were wrongfully convicted. What happened to you is a failure of this system at every level." My throat locked, but I didn't look away. I wanted the whole room to see the man they'd thrown away. The judge continued. "Your conviction is vacated. Your record is cleared. And this court formally apologizes for the years stolen from you." I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. I just let the words break over me. Next came the final blow, the one Mark would never recover from. The civil settlement. The hospital tried to bargain, tried to downplay, tried to spin. My attorney did not let them breathe. They settled for an amount so large the courtroom fell silent when the numbers were read. Enough to replace every lost year, every sleepless night, every piece of my life that prison tried to erase. Mark wasn't spared. Not even close. He was arrested on the spot: evidence tampering, obstruction, perjury, falsifying reports, malicious framing. The cuffs clamped over his wrists exactly where mine once had. He didn't look so smug when they pushed him past the cameras. He kept his head down, hiding from the world that used to believe him. I didn't hide. I walked out of that courthouse into a wall of reporters, sunlight on my face, air that felt cleaner than anything I'd breathed in years. Raphael was waiting at the bottom of the steps. He didn't say anything, he just pulled me into a tight, Steady hug. The kind that holds you up when your legs are trying to remember how to stand. 9 years lost. But the truth came back with interest, and it collected every debt. I didn't get my old life back. I got something better. I got justice. Loud, public, undeniable justice. And the man who stole my life now gets to watch me live every second he tried to take.